This is my 1947 Plymouth Special Deluxe that I've owned for about 5 years now, and I've neglected for about 4 of those. When I first got this car running, cylinder 3 had 0 compression, which I found out later was just a stuck exhaust valve, which I worked out with some tranny fluid and a rubber mallet. And ever since then, it runs like a sewing machine. After I moved on to the interior of the car, working hard on getting the floor patched and getting the seats installed, the project kind of just dropped. Now you all know I do flips every few months and I detail on the side, so the Plymouth just kind of got put by the wayside. So today we're going to give the Plymouth some much deserved love by finishing the floors so that we can move on to rust proofing the floors, then carpet, then headliner, and the rest of the interior. So let's not waste any more time and let's get started. When I first got this car, it looked like this. And now it looks like this. And you can see I've done some work to it. So this is the original paint that I was able to buff out and bring back to life again. And while it looks shiny in the video, it's pretty dirty at the moment. One of the first things I did was get rid of the original oil bypass filter that was on here, and I put a firewall mounted canister type that I can replace easily. I also took the cylinder head off when I had to get that cylinder 3 exhaust valve freed up. So it has a new gasket on there. Did a water pump because the old one was leaking. And you may see I'm running an alternator now because I converted this car to 12 volt. And I'm running a 12 volt coil and some kind of universal Chrysler solenoid. Took my original horns, put them in the media blaster and painted them up. They look nice and they're loud as hell. That's where the battery would originally be. The battery for the car sits in the trunk now, and this panel was really rusted out from the old battery, so I have to make a panel to weld back in place, and the battery is staying in the trunk. Moving on to the interior, these are seats out of a 2015 Ford Escape Limited, I believe. The driver's side is 10-way power, passenger side is manual, and I made my own mounts for these. You can see I have my work cut out for me in the back, and once I get the rest of the floor patched up, I'll get these bench seats mounted as well. I have a new headliner to put up to replace the old one that's gone. You can see some of my floor patches that I have to clean up yet, and I have new carpet to put in here. I installed an all-new wiring harness with a fuse block. I do still have some cleanup to do of the wiring. As you can see, it's laying on the floor here. I've converted all the lighting on the car to 12 volt. These marker lights are switchbacks, so these turn to amber when you have the turn signals on. They turn back to white when you turn them off. These are original old Mopar driving lights that were on the car when I got it. I just refurbished them and put LEDs in them. Tail lights are all LED with the original glass lenses. This became a third brake light with LED license plate light. Okay, so for those of you wondering that have an old car like this, what converting to 12 volt looks like, it's actually pretty easy. So for me, I have that alternator that came with my 12 volt conversion kit. I'm using the original starter to the car. And you might be wondering, will that starter hold up to the additional voltage? I can tell you that it will. I've had it on there for years. It's spun this car over hundreds of times, and it's never given me an issue yet. And it spins nice and fast because it's 12 volt now. Here's my battery box that was relocated to the trunk. The wheels are off a 2006 Mustang, and I am running spacers in here. Oh yeah, I'm also running an original 1947 license plate on this car. I used electrolysis to get all the rust off of it. This is what it looked like before. This is after electrolysis. And now this is what it looks like after my wife and daughter painted it for me. Alright, this is one of 2 areas we have to repair yet. And you can see this is a very curvy piece. Curves down in the back, curves right here. I don't have any kind of dies to make curves like that. So we have to make this a 2-piece repair. We'll bring it down this way, bring it in this way. We'll make whatever curves we can make and we'll weld it together. This does not have to be perfect. I am not making this a concourse show car. I'm making it a functional car that also looks good. My second repair I have back here to make is even curvier yet. It curves here, it curves here, it curves here. We will stitch this up just the best way we can, and that'll be done for the floor. All right, I have my safety gear engaged. Let's get our first piece. Well, that's a good start. Yeah, we should be able to get some weld on there and move that to where we want it to be. Let's give ourselves a little surface to weld on here. Let's see how many of these I can make a permanent part of my cheek. Okay, we're going to pretend that gives us anywhere near enough surface to weld on. Don't worry about these rust holes here. They'll weld right in, I'm sure. No, they're gonna blow right through. Okay, just like that. And that patch is done. All right, this piece is gonna be a little trickier. There's a bend here and a bend here and a bend in the corner. We're gonna have to do some creative work on this. We'll see what we can do. By the way, I'm not a welder, but I can weld if you know what I mean. Okay, some creative bending time. Okay, put metal in hole. And that's the last patch right there. Now does it look like dog shit? Yes. Is it functional? You betcha. All right, the next thing I need to do is to fit the rear seats because I need to make brackets so I can get this rust proofing on. It's gonna be a little tricky because there's some contours back there that are gonna make these difficult. But we'll get them. That's how good we are. Okay, I got the 40% of the bench mocked up in a rough location of where it's going to be. Now I have to take some measurements and see if this has to slide left or right a little bit. Kind of like the gap between the front and the floor, so I think we're good up and down. As you can see, this is going to be tricky making mounts for. There's a lot of contours back here. A little bit of thin floor too I'm a little worried about. We're going to have to do some reinforcement. No big deal. Okay, the 40's sitting pretty tight up against the body, and I have 31 inches on the 60. Which would put me about 1.5 inches away from the body on this side. So I need to move the 40 over a little bit. I don't know how well that's going to do with my wooden blocks here, just kind of setting it in position. And I'm going to lose my support on the body side, but let's see if we can just move this over a little bit. I think that gets me right about where I need to be right there. Now that we have the 40 pretty much where we want it, I need to take some measurements, get some brackets made, figure out how I'm going to support this. Like I said, it's not going to be easy. I'm going to need to come up off the floor here. The other mounting hole is right under here. What I'm thinking about doing is I have some 2x2 tubing left over. I'm thinking about running that from left to right and then making my spacers off of it to mount the seat to. That'll stiffen this up back here and I can add a lot of support. So I might mock some 2x2 up in place and see how we do. I need to get a rough idea of where my tubing is going to sit. So I drew some area where the bracket is sitting right now. My tubing will run under here with a bolt welded up through and a nut on top. And we'll do something creative over there where the lip of the frame rail starts. So what I'm going to do, I have some 2x2 tubing left over from my truck bed, and I'm going to do kind of the same concept here. I'm going to cut a length of the 2x2 tubing, then I'm going to cut some of the scrap tubing to make a spacer off of the original 2x2 that'll bring me up to the 3¼ inches that I need. And I'm going to weld that to the tubing. And I'm going to weld a bolt to the underside of the spacer that'll bring it up like this so we can use a nut to fasten the seat. I'm going to show you a couple conceptualized drawings of how my mount's going to be back here. So this is the end of our 2x2 tubing. And what I'm going to do is cut another piece of tubing just in the spot where I have a mount for the seat. And I'm going to weld it like this with a bolt welded right here and sticking up. And then my seat bracket will slip over that with the nut screwing it down here. Now, for the front mount, what I'm going to do is weld flat bar out that's going to come down at an angle like this because the seat bracket sits at an angle. And then I'm going to bend it again and bring it straight down to the floor and weld it in place. And then this will have a nut welded to this side and a bolt coming down through the seat bracket holding it in place there. So that's kind of an idea of what we're going to look like here. This is 2x2 tubing, 1/8 inch wall. Plenty thick enough and strong enough for what we're going to use it for here. But again, underneath the car, we're going to have to support, give this something solid to mount to. Okay, I got my tubing cut and I got my first spacer cut. Now I need to drill a hole in the top of this so I can put my bolt up through and weld it. So I'm going to put it in the bench vise here, make a hole for it. There we go. How you like this jig, huh? This is where I'm going to weld at, attached to my cherry picker. You can see my bolt sticking down through that I'm going to weld to this bracket. This should give you a little better representation on how my mount's going to work. You can see the bolts sticking up through, got a nut, lock washer, and washer on it. So although I'm not welding my mount into the car, I'm actually going to bolt it up through the bottom with some channel underneath for support. I am going to probably tack this into place for right now, just to get all my measurements and all my brackets welded up. And then I can drill my holes up through the bottom to be able to bolt this into place. And then my plan is to cut holes into the sides where I can actually weld nuts on the inside of this and have the bolts just go up through the bottom. Okay guys, that's going to do it for this video. Join me next time where we finish up the back seats on this car and then we start getting into rust proofing the floor. Just to give you a little idea what I'm using on the inside for the floor, that's this rust encapsulator from Eastwood. I'm going to spray it in with a latex gun that I have because this is a thicker paint. I believe that can be reduced. I'll look into it a little more, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, or you found me funny, please be sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to my channel, sign up for notifications for when my new videos pop out, and I'll see you the next time on this Plymouth. I've owned this car for... This is my Plymouth. Now when I first got this car, it had a drop... Now when I first got this car, it had a cylinder... Now when I first got this car, it had a drop cylinder, to which I used electrolysis. Okay, we're going to pretend that gives us anywhere near... Okay, we're going to pretend that gives us anywhere near enough surface to melt. Okay, I got my bar cut. Okay, I got my tubing cut. Use my Go-Go Gadget step bit. This is not straight in the vise.